When you first went to Fidelity, what was the market like? Well, after the great rush of the 50s, the market did brilliantly, and everybody says, wow, looking backwards, this would have been a great time to get in. So a lot of people got in the early 60s and in the mid 60s. The market peaked in 65 and 66 around 1,000, and that's when I came. I was a summer student at Fidelity in 1966. There were 75 applicants for 3 jobs at Fidelity, but I caddied for the president for 8 years. 75 people applying for 3 jobs, and Peter was just like, I caddied for the president. So he says it was sort of a rigged deal, I think. I worked there the summer of 66, and I remember the market was close to 1,000 in 1966. And in 1982, 16 years later, it was 777. So we had a long drought after that. So the people were concerned about the stock market early in the 50s. They kept watching and watching, not investing. It started to go up dramatically, and they finally caved in and bought big time in the mid 60s and got the peak. So Peter Lynch gets into Fidelity in 1965, 66. The stock market's at 1,000. Right now it's at what, 32,000 or whatever it is. It was at 1,000. 16 years later, it was down to 777. So that whole 16-year period was like a really, really rough period. Not dissimilar to what we have had in Japan for a long time, actually. So that must have been brutal. One of the things that I always think is a really interesting dynamic of the internet now and things like Reddit and Wall Street bets and stuff is that so many of us are just like, buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip. Oh, it dipped more, buy the dip, buy the dip. Like, I wonder if there are enough, and there's that whole culture on Wall Street bets of like, oh, you're paper handed, you're weak sauce. I'm a diamond hand. I only buy more when it goes down, kind of thing. If there's enough of that, then technically the market could become like perpetually just go up. Maybe at some point you would think people would just start selling out and taking gains or pulling back because of fear or market downturn or things like that. But it's weird right now, we are expecting, and actually Druckenmiller in the interview last week was talking about how if the interest rates actually do start going up, which they probably will soon, even though the Fed keeps saying, it'll be like 2023, but everybody's kind of like, I don't know, man, and if they start going up, then the market probably has to go down because right now there is no place to put your money besides the market to make money. So what do you guys think about that? What would you do, if the stock market went sideways or down for the next 16 years all of a sudden? Like, I wonder if that's even possible right now. Just kind of interesting food for thought. Probably it is possible, and if enough of us small retail guys just get reamed hard enough, probably there's going to be a lot of trauma and a bunch of people will just be like, I'm never doing stocks again in my life, so interesting stuff to think about. And he goes on to say, a lot of people did get it wrong. When they were going back to, the 60s, a lot of people got in at the wrong time. A lot of people did very well. And some people said, this is it. I'll never get back in again. And they maybe meant it, but they probably got back in again anyways. How much did you make at your first job at Fidelity? I made 16 grand a year. And then a year later, I got a raise to 17 grand. That was great. And then when he was 33 in 1977, he took over Magellan, which is pretty mind-blowing. As far as I know, there's not any 33-year-olds running like massive funds. But interestingly, he does get into what Magellan was at the time. It wasn't a massive thing. Now it is a massive thing, but at the time it wasn't.